The events here took place when I was an 11-year-old girl on vacation with my family. My mother, younger brother, and I went down to Port Elizabeth to visit my family. Being the only kids present meant we were more excited to play in the ocean than spend time indoors. My mom picked a sunny day. We packed our boogie boards, and we headed to the nearest beach with my grandma tagging along. My brother and I ran towards a set of stairs leading down to the beach. I stopped. There were eyes on me. I sensed it. Growing up in South Africa, you are taught to be vigilant. Notice your surroundings. Notice people especially. I looked around the crowd trying to pinpoint what was setting my radar off. Then I found it. Two men about 20 meters in front of me, about late 20s to early 30s. They were frozen in place, staring at me with big, toothy smiles on their faces. I returned a smile and a nod, acknowledging their presence but also making them aware that I saw them. Be friendly, not naive. Be polite and don't trust. Observing them, I felt a little unsettled. The crowd was moving around them and they didn't speak to one another. They only seemed to move as I glanced away. I was alarmed but only made a mental note to keep an eye on them. Continued down the stairs and jumped into the soft sand. My brother and I waited for the adults to pick a spot to set up before we took off swimming. Some time went by. I saw the same men from earlier wade into the water quite some distance from us, and felt a bit silly for worrying about them. I just couldn't shake that uneasiness. I got out and took a rest by my mom. I didn't see the men anywhere, but still had the feeling of eyes on me. I chalked it up to paranoia and went back to the water after a few minutes. My brother had gotten out of the water and started digging his magnificent sand pit, so I decided to use him as a landmark to determine my position in the water while riding the waves. I did this a few times. Suddenly, goosebumps shot up my back. I looked around and the same men were just a few meters away from me, waving and beckoning me towards them. I was having fun up until then and hadn't noticed them approaching. Adrenaline set in as I saw them smiling once more. Their eyes seemed blank, insincere, and out of place with those huge grins. I nervously grinned back and just shook my head in the invitation to come closer. I'm sure the fear was written all over my face. As if to confirm my fears of their intentions, they started towards me. I knew I wouldn't be strong enough in the water to fight, run, or swim, and nobody was close enough to hear me call out. As I was panicking, the water suddenly pulled me deeper into the sea. A big wave was coming. I placed my boogie board in position and started paddling. I was now further into the ocean than the creeps. The wave hit when we were about a meter away. It took me right past them. I felt relieved for a split second, and then felt a hand grabbing and yanking my ankle hard. My heart caught in my throat. I kicked out of instinct. Fortunately, being sunscreen doused, I was slippery and managed to get free instantly. The wave carried me all the way to the beach. I was coughing with a mouthful of seawater, but scampered to my feet and ran to fetch my brother. I told him I'd race him back to Mom, and he was delighted for the challenge. I glanced back from where the sea had just ejected me. The creeps were still standing where they were, smiling and waving. I stayed at my mom's side until we finally packed up to head home. As we walked to our car, I looked over my shoulder. There they were, two grown men, staring, smiling, and waving at a child they had tried to grab like nothing was weird. They turned around and disappeared into the crowd. Yeah, let's not meet again, you smiley fucks. So I'm currently a sophomore in college, and the bar scene here is pretty big. Going out for the night to get special deals on alcohol so you can get plastered with your friends is kind of the go-to here. Despite this, I'm not a huge drinker and don't enjoy it a lot because it tastes so bad and hurts my stomach. I do enjoy the company though, and often just go out to be with my friends or meet new people. A lot of the time, I'm called the dad of the group because I end up taking care of them all the time. And that's the prelude to what happened when I decided to go with them one Friday night. So we all got dressed up, pre-gaming a bit at my friend Q's apartment before we Ubered downtown to one of our pretty well-known college bars. After we got in, my friends immediately split off into tiny groups, combing over the club for girls they wanted to try their shot at spending the night with. This is gonna make me sound weird, but one-night stands really aren't my thing. I don't want to end up cock-blocking my friends, so instead of looking for girls, I usually find someone at the bar and make friends with them. I was chatting with some dude that was wearing a cowboy hat when eventually a girl approached me. She was pretty cute, probably 5'6", with dirty blonde hair and eyes that I think were light brown. They were so light that they almost looked gold, which threw me off a little bit. She asked if she could buy me some drinks in exchange for being her friend for the night. I of course accepted because hey, that's what I came here for anyway, right? Anyways, she kept her word, and we started talking to one another, and she introduced herself as Alexia, but to call her Alex. I asked her some basic stuff about the friends she came with, if she went to college here, etc., to which all the answers were no. That struck me pretty odd, as it's honestly really unsafe to be in the downtown area alone as a girl at like 1 a.m. in the morning. She said she wanted to hear about me though, and actually seemed pretty excited to listen. It felt like a really nice change of pace, because I'm usually the one learning about other people, not the other way around. It also could have been the alcohol starting to take effect, since I'm pretty big lightweight, as like I said, I don't usually binge drink often. The whole time I was talking, she was staring into my eyes and had this warm smile that made me feel so acknowledged, if that makes any sense. I felt like she was enjoying her time as much as I was. And that just made me even happier because I thought it meant I made a new friend. That was when her demeanor began to change though. She started to get kind of flirty and eventually asked if I wanted to go home with her. Like I said, I'm not really a one-night stand type of guy, and I explained I like to get to know people a little better before sleeping together. I'm pretty sure I saw what I think was an anger flash across her face, but it was quickly replaced with another smile, and she suggested just going home and watching a movie instead. I agreed and pulled out my phone and began ordering an Uber. She just basically grabbed my wrist and started guiding me outside. I was confused, trying to ask if she was even planning to drive after drinking, but she wouldn't really answer me. We eventually got outside the club, and she pointed to a black Honda Civic parked right at the front of the club. That was when all the warning bells rang like a tornado had passed through them. I was pretty drunk at this point in the night, maybe 6 or 7 drinks deep. I was still aware enough to see the red flags. She said she came alone, but the lane the car was parked in was only for pickups. I never saw her order an Uber. Somebody would have had to have been driving the car. This was enough to make me feel uncomfortable, and I asked again if she was planning to drive the car. She said yes, as she continued to walk closer to it. I knew that it was a bold-faced lie. As we got closer, my heart sank as I noticed the outline of 3 other guys in the car. At that point, my adrenaline kicked in. I yanked my hand back away from her and said there's no way in hell I'm getting in that car with her. She tried begging me one more time, saying she really wanted to have sex and would let me do whatever I wanted. But I had already turned around to walk back to the club. She started cussing me out, practically screaming at the top of her lungs as I walked back to the bouncers to go in. I texted my friends what happened, and we all met back up and went home. It was obvious she was going to college bars, trying to get guys drunk before offering to sleep with them, so she could get them in that car with 3 other men to rob them or do God knows what else. I called my city's anonymous tip line and left a detailed description of the girl, the car, and the place where it happened. That night was a real wake-up call for me, and I'm so thankful that despite being drunk that night, I was able to piece together what was happening before it was too late. Please remember to always be safe when going out with friends, especially when it's late at night or if alcohol is involved. But to Alexia, who I saw that night at the bar, let's not meet. Back in summer 2020, I was 14 and I would spend a lot of time with my cousin. We both loved going on walks and would always walk in the neighborhood near her house. One night, I was spending the night over and we decided to go on a walk. It was around 10 p.m. I'd like to precise that the roads weren't well lit, so it was very dark. We were used to doing that, so we weren't really scared at all. While we were walking, a white Jeep started driving very close to us. The guy who was driving lowered his window, and there was another guy with him. They both seemed to be around 25 years old. The guys were just weirdly staring at us for like 2 minutes. Then the guy in the passenger seat started asking weird questions like, "Are you girls not scared of the dark?" And after asking this, he drove away. Me and my cousin were relieved, thinking that it was some kind of joke. But unfortunately, we noticed the Jeep's lights on the road, and it seemed like they were going back and forth before coming to our level again. And this time it was the guy in the passenger seat who talked and asked if we wanted a ride home. And he said, "We'll take care of you," while smiling. In this moment, both of our eyes opened wide. After that, they drove away again. Me and my cousin were petrified. We couldn't even speak. We could still hear the Jeep, so we didn't want to run home yet because we were scared they would follow us. We hid inside the garden behind the trees for about 10 minutes. When the Jeep came back again, but fortunately didn't see us. When the lights disappeared, we sprinted home. After we had gotten back, we cried a lot, and she told me that she got really scared. She had noticed that there was a knife and some sort of pills in the back seat. Don't walk in small neighborhoods at night. And never trust a place. For context, I'm a 24-year-old female. I live in a very populated city where people drive a lot. I'm still shooken up by this, and I am honestly curious to hear thoughts. The other night, I parked my car outside, went to let my dog in my house, and went back out to get my stuff. No, it was around 6 p.m. and completely dark out because it was winter. I get into my driver's seat and lock the car. I'm sitting there for about a minute getting all my stuff together. And all of a sudden, I see a man walk in from the front of my car to the driver's side window. He's holding something. He holds it up to my window, and I automatically get extremely panicked. A few months ago, a man held a wrench up to my window in a grocery store parking lot where I was sitting with my roommate, but he saw my dog and walked away fast. It was a sketchy situation then, and a sketchy situation now. The next few steps are blurry. I'm looking at him in a panic. He is motioning for me to roll my window down. I look into the back seat of my car to see my dog there to protect me, and realize she's not there as I just let her in the house. And I also come to realize that I had the back windows both 75% open. Then a thought pops into my mind. I can drive away. My car is on. I shift the car into drive, and he reaches back onto either window. The door, the side of the car, I'm not sure. I start to drive and he backs up. I pull into the street and almost hit another car, and end up pulling out, leaving, and shaking. The next day I realized my landlord had a camera pointed at the front of the house, just to check if packages were getting stolen. I asked if he had clips from that night before, and he did. Too bad it is motion censored, so it only shows the movement when my car is pulling out. He walks away from the car and he has a huge wooden plank or something in his hands, hidden behind his back. It had to have been at least a 3-foot plank or something, right behind his back. He then walked down one way of the street, then turned around and went the other way. I wish I didn't even see that video because I was scared before and thought maybe I was overreacting. But now, I know he was holding something, and that could have potentially been a weapon. I'm very thankful I trusted my instincts. Someone on a neighborhood website that night said their car got stolen 2 streets over. So maybe he wanted my car. Anyways, let's not meet again.
I love reading posts in this sub, but never thought I had anything to contribute. However, while listening to things on YouTube, I suddenly remembered this. So I lived alone in a bad neighborhood just outside of the city. At this point, I had been living there for maybe 3 years with no incident. Well, I mean, there were several shootings on my street, but no one shot at me, so no incident, I guess. I'm the kind of person who can't sit still for very long, so I find myself standing or pacing a lot. On this particular night, maybe at about 2 a.m., I was pacing while reading a textbook to prepare for an upcoming test at my university. I stopped pacing for a little and just stood near my front door to read. That's when I heard my doorknob turn. For some reason, though I nearly shit myself, I was able to calmly look down at my deadbolt to double check that it was locked. It was. Whew. I looked through the peephole to see who was trying to come in, but no one was standing there. Obviously, this was confusing. I neither am superstitious nor a believer in the supernatural, but I'm also stupid. So my first thought was, Is a ghost trying to break into my house? Thankfully, that thought gave way to a more logical thought of maybe they're going around back. So I quickly moved to the back door to make sure it was locked. It was. Whew. But then my front doorknob turned again. I tiptoe ran to the front door. At this point, my heart is pounding. My dog, big protective teddy bear, is looking at me with major concern in his eyes. I looked the front peephole again, but there's still no one there. That's when I hear a small knock on my door as I'm looking through the peephole. Then a small child voice said, "Let me in." Silence. Let me in. I'm still looking through the peephole while covering my mouth with my hand to make my breathing quieter. Through the peephole, I see a small 3-year-oldish girl walk to the edge of my porch and look in my bushes. She nods, then says, "Okay," in what I think was supposed to be a whisper. She walks closer to the door again, and I lose sight of her in the peephole. She tries the handle again, then knocks and says, "Please help me." My uncle is a cop, so I had heard about people using children as a way to get people to open their door before blitz attacking. So I'm pretty sure that's what's happening at this point. I wasn't sure how to handle this situation, so I just said, not even into a phone, "Hi, I think someone is trying to break into my apartment." "Yeah, my address? 123 Fake Street Avenue. Yeah, I'll stay on the line." I then saw a shadow emerge from my bushes. Thankfully, they scooped the kid and ran off. There were 2 people and the kid. People who tried to break into my apartment to rob me or kill me. Let's not meet. I, 23 female, took my 2 dogs, a Cane Corso and a Labradoodle, on a walk on a nature trail near my home. My car was the only car parked in the parking lot when I arrived, so no one else was on the trail. The trailhead only has one entrance, and the trail has thick forest on either side of it. My dogs and I started walking, and maybe 3/4 of a mile in, a man on a bike approached me from behind. I moved aside with my dogs to let him pass me, and when he does, my Cane Corso lunged toward him. I held her back, but that was unusual behavior for her. Around 5 minutes after the biker passed me, he passed me again going the other way toward the exit, and again my dog lunged at him. I thought it was extremely odd that he decided to turn around so quickly since he couldn't have gone much more than a mile, which seems like an extremely short bike ride. He was dressed in biking gear and had a professional bike. It just seemed like he turned around very quickly after he saw me. I decided to stop and let my dogs rest, and I FaceTimed my boyfriend to tell him about my odd encounter. My boyfriend agreed to stay on the phone with me while I walked back because I felt unsafe. Then my dogs and I turned around and started heading back to my car. About half a mile into our trip back, both of my dogs lunge at something inside the tree line off to the side of the trail. They barked and growled and tugged on their leashes towards the area of the tree line. I did not see anything there, but my dogs definitely sensed something. We moved on and made it back to the parking lot, and I saw one other car there with that man's bike hanging on the bike rack on the trunk of the vehicle. Once I got closer to the car, I realized no one was inside. I have a bad feeling that man had very bad intentions. I think that he biked back to his car after seeing me, walked to that spot on the trail, and hid in the woods to do who knows what. Then had second thoughts because I was on the phone with my boyfriend and I had 2 big dogs with me. It makes me sick thinking about it. I'm open to other explanations if anyone can think of one. I want this just to be an innocent encounter, just a misunderstanding on my part. But it feels sinister, and I feel like my dogs sensed his energy from the start. This situation made me realize that walking home on a rural trail, even with 2 big dogs, is not safe for me. Edit. Him using the restroom in the forest is unlikely. There is a bathroom in the parking area. When I saw his car parked next to mine, I originally went to the bathroom area because I worried he might be in his car or by his car. When I eventually went to my car to leave, that's when I realized no one was in his car.
I've done quite well for myself as an adult, but when I was younger, we were very poor. In middle school, I lived in government housing projects that were like little one-level apartments, with 2 apartments sharing a wall, and each all spaced apart. There were woods directly behind the cluster of apartments, with no gate in between, but no one ever went into the woods, which I learned was the reason due to this incident. These apartments were very poorly made, and the windows could easily be popped in and out. Never mind a lock. The front door was somewhat sturdy, but with a good kick, it would have easily been opened. My dad was a pretty stocky bodybuilder type, so I had a false sense of security and would leave my window blinds open at night, as my room faced some trees that would blow in the wind. I really loved nature and wasn't afraid of the dark, so I liked watching the trees as I fell asleep. Our apartment's front door was facing the woods with my friends behind ours, and our building blocking their view. As you walk in the front door, the hallway is on the left-hand side. My room was at the end of the hallway on the right. My big window that took up most of the wall was on the left, and my bed was sideways facing both walls, so I could lay on my side and watch the trees. The woods were about a field away facing our front door, so I couldn't see it from my room. This was just a small area of trees of vegetation. One night, I woke up feeling a sense of unease, and through my sleepy haze, made out the figure of a large man standing at the window, watching me sleep with total confidence, not caring at all if he was seen. He was in a big coat and looked quite burly, and average to taller height. It was black in my room, and outside was just barely illuminated by moonlight. I had just cracked open my eyes and froze once I realized what I was seeing. I kept my eyes as closed as possible, just enough to peer at him in the darkness, and literally rolled out of my bed to the side, not facing the window, and shouted for my dad, who was across the hall with both of our doors open as I crawled out. Not the smartest, but I was a dumb 12-year-old girl. He hadn't gone to sleep yet and was in my room in a heartbeat as the guy took off. He went to run out the front door yelling threats as well, which probably wasn't smart, but the guy was already gone. I truly believe he never came in before or after this due to my dad's sheer size and build, but I'll never truly know. A few nights later, I was spending the night at my friend's, who lived directly behind us with the same layout. Her room was the first room on the left, with her window facing the woods and our apartment blocking the view. Her sister was on the second on the left-hand side. Her mom and toddler sister were in the room on the right, like mine in my own apartment. We finished watching Dave Chappelle and went to do one another's hair in her room, with her older sister helping us, while her mom and little sister went to bed. Not long after, we heard screaming from her mom's room and heavy stomping feet. Her older sister swung open the door to the room we were in, and then there's just a flash of a huge white man in his 30s or 40s running down the hall towards the living room and front door, while her mom behind him with a butcher knife hacking at air and screaming bloody murder. Dude flew out the door and towards the woods while her mom locked the door and called the cops. This man had the audacity to pop open the window and crawl into the bed that was pushed against the window just slightly under it, not realizing this woman was a whole Amazon warrior who slept with a butcher knife and would clearly wake up to protect her baby. She was quick and slashed at him, though I'm not sure the damage, since I was ushered home directly after. The cop went looking in the woods for him and found him and another man quite similar to him living and hiding out there together. They were also responding to a call from a frantic mother whose little girl had been taken that day as well from our housing units. They found her with those creeps. She had been there all day and night with them, and she was around 3 or 4. They were taken to jail, and that was the last I heard of it, as the adults didn't let us in on the conversation. Poor little girl was probably traumatized, and I hope she's been able to heal. I can't imagine what could have happened if my friend's mom hadn't been so quick and slept with the weapon, or if he decided to put up a fight instead of run. I still don't understand why he didn't try to overpower her, but it's possible she injured him. After this, my dad explained to me how sometimes drug addicts or homeless people would hang out in these woods. So, creepy dude who liked to peep and kidnap, let's never meet again. Hey everyone, thanks for listening if you stuck around to this point. Make sure you check out my friend's site, bradtuckervoice.com, if you happen to have any voice acting or narration needs. We actually used to have a podcast together called the Black Crypt Podcast, which covered predominantly all things horror related. We did that for a few years with another friend of ours, but unfortunately COVID kind of knocked that off and killed that podcast for us, along with a few other things that were out of our control. But this YouTube channel came from a segment we used to do on there, so I guess it kind of all worked out. He's a good dude, and I'm trying to convince him to start up a horror narration channel of his own. So check him out if you like what you heard. Maybe you could hire him to follow you around and narrate your daily life. Who knows? It's an option, right? Yeah. Also, sorry, gotta do it. If you haven't hit the like button yet, hit that like button, the subscribe button, and the notification bell to be notified of future episodes when they come out. Also, please leave a comment below of a theme you'd like to hear next. Always in need of more stories, so if you have a true story of your own, feel free to send it to my email. All the links are below. Thank you so much for all your support. It really means a lot to me, considering how new of a channel I am. But I'll see you guys in the next one. Cheers.